Hello, you guys. I bet you're wondering why I have my iPad with me with a creepypasta in it. Well, to answer your question, name's Shadow, and today I'm gonna be premiering my newest series called Shadow Reads. For the premiere, I'm going to read Dragon Tales Lost Episode by Anonymous. I gotta clear my throat, and this is gonna be a long one, so here we go. A few months ago, I went outside to check the mail. I have one of those really old mailboxes that's right outside my house. I looked through the mail, and it was all bills and flyers and magazines I subscribed to. Then I noticed something else at the bottom of the mailbox. It was a videotape. Now, sometimes I find things in the mailbox like bugs, garbage, and bugs, things like that. A few years back, we found a squirrel who made a nest here. But this time it was a videotape. I picked it up and looked at it. It looked like a normal videotape. I looked at the side to see a shiny sticker of a butterfly on it, and the letters O, B, and L written with a black crayon. I peeked into the mailbox, hoping to find some explanation for the videotape, but I found nothing else. I walked inside and set up my VCR, which had been collecting dust in the attic by then. I inserted the tape in and waited until it was finished rewinding. When it was finished, I pressed play on my remote. It was 10:30 in the evening, and I grabbed some popcorn and beer and plopped myself on the couch and was ready to watch this mysterious tape. The video started with one of those WND indents. I last seen a logo when I was maybe 5 or 6 when I came home from school. What followed was a brief commercial. What followed was a commercial for the theme park Marineland, an old advertisement from the 90s. During the advert, the screen kept flashing that I couldn't make out what was flashing because it only lasted for a quarter of a second. The Marineland commercial was cut off and it went to pitch black. I was about to rewind to see what was flashing when a familiar thing came up on screen. PBS Kids. There was a brief commercial for Chuck E. Cheese's, followed by a commercial for a Super Mario game, an old Reese's Puffs commercial from 1995, a Quizlunchables ad, and then it faded to black. Suddenly it faded to what show is coming up next. Coming up next is Dragon Tales on PBS Kids. The narrator announced, I'm sure most of you know the show Dragon Tales. It's better that you've at least seen 5 episodes of the show before you understand any of this. But for those who simply have the time, Dragon Tales is about 2 siblings named Max and Emmy who have an enchanted dragon scale in their possession that transports them to a land of dragons known as Dragonland. The intro of the show started. Everything was right, except there was no sound and certain shots were cut out. And cut off in the middle of the intro and cut to a picture of Max sitting on a yellow chair with the words Dragon Tales crudely written above him in red. The thing that weirded out me the most was Max's facial expression. His skin was pale, his eyes were bloodshot and tiny, and he sat there as if he was trying to smile but needed to cry. Almost like the expression of a man about to hang himself. The episode started. It showed an outside view of Max and Emmy's house, as it always does. The sky was dark red and the sun was an orangey color. Max walked in their playroom holding his elbow in pain. Ow! He explained. I bumped my elbow on the table. Emmy looked at him with a frown on her face. Maybe if you do me, she replied as canned laughter played in the background, then your elbow wouldn't hurt so much. I was shocked at what I just heard. Had she said what I thought she just said? More significantly, there were no credits or episode title either. Emmy Maxon said, Mom told us not to say that word. Emmy took a deep breath, but before she could speak, Max screamed, Don't do it, Emmy! He cried, I don't want to live with this anymore. Do what? I wondered. What was Emmy going to do? I was starting to get scared at this point. No, I wasn't watching a normal episode of Dragon Tales. They continued the conversation, but the rest was barely audible. From what I could gather, they were fighting and arguing until finally they all calmed down. When they all calmed down, Amy suggested in a clear voice, Why don't we go to Dragonland? The dragon wallpaper was black and bright red when compared to the pastel colors they usually had. The dragons had on it had gigantic smiles on their faces, nothing true out of the ordinary. They opened up a secret compartment that opened to show a small box. Inside was the enchanted dragon scale that transports them to Dragonland. Max and Emmy held it together. For those who don't know the show like I do, the dragon scale would not work unless they chant a rhyme. The two siblings then chanted, I wish, with all my heart, to fly with dragons in the land apart. After they arrived in Dragonland, they looked for their friends. They found Ord sitting behind a rock with a portable radio beside him as Max approached him. Hey Ord, he asked, wanna play with my new truck? Ord turned around and I could hear that the radio was playing something. At first I couldn't hear what the voices were saying because the quality was a little crappy. But as the quality improved, I began to hear what the man on the radio was saying. What I heard was, well, Jim, this is a terrible situation we have here. Police have confirmed the plane carrying President Donald Trump was hijacked by a few members of Al-Qaeda. The plane crashed into the One World Trade Center in New York City, the city where Trump was supposed to appear. We are unsure who was on that plane, or if there was any casualties. I don't know anything else, but all I can tell you is the One World Trade Center is in flames, and the plane was carrying President Donald Trump. During the time the radio was playing, Ord was sitting behind the rock. He had no expression on his face, and he was just sitting there still. He wasn't dead, but his face looked like it. I thought back to Max's expression on the chair. Once the static ended, Ord walked away. He walked expressionless in the street light around Dragonland. The sky there was still blood red. In a flash, Ord then gave a slick smile and raised his eyebrow, and then a gigantic scream erupted out of nowhere. It cut to a video that was blurry and a bit pixelated, almost like it was recorded with a potato. It showed a man playing fetch with his dog. When the man threw the frisbee at some bushes, the dog reacted and ran to the bushes to retrieve it. The dog then ran out of there, whimpering and obviously frightened by something. When the man felt concerned enough to the point that he decided to investigate. What was shown next was shocking. What the man saw in the bushes was what looked like a realistic version of Ord's corpse in a bony-like state lying dead. There were some maggots and flies and other bugs attracted by it. Some parts still had some skin on it. Ord's head was the only one that was left intact, or what was left of it. Ord's face was mutilated, with his eyes torn out and a message carved out on his head, and his blood said nothing but indecipherable Roman. It cut to black at the second, and then faded into a church. The bells rang in a distorted deep tone. There was no one there, and all that there was a coffin and stuff that you would usually find at church, and the sky was still blood red. The anchorman on the radio proclaimed, breaking news, President Donald John Trump is dead. He was killed this afternoon in a plane crash with Vice President Mike Pence, 50 government officials, and 40 other people. Also on the plane was Canadian singer-songwriter Justin Bieber, and American singer-songwriter Taylor Swift, who were supposed to make appearances that day. The plane was hijacked by 5 Al-Qaeda members whose names have not been confirmed yet. As you can see, we heard blood-curdling screams coming from the plane crash and called the police to investigate. However, all they found was a shattered television, a broken game console, probably like a Nintendo Switch or something, and a torn-up couch. I claim to have heard something that sounded like a knife stabbing their flesh, and a small few even claimed to have heard gunshots. However, none of this has been confirmed to be true, as there is nobody here. There are no bullet shells, knives, or even any blood for that matter. While the police were investigating the plane, firefighters were at the One World Trade Center doing the best they can. Apparently one firefighter found a trapdoor in a closet, so the police arrived to investigate. All they found was a ladder that led them to a big room with white concrete walls at the bottom of the building. A surveillance camera sat on one corner of the room. There were 2 chairs in the middle of the room. One chair had a gun that looked like it was used, while one chair is knocked down. On the floor was a blood stain and a pair of glasses. The only real distinguishing feature is that the glasses were unusually round. Other than that, they're just plain brown glasses, with one lens broken. All the officers claim to remember seeing those glasses somewhere, but they can't seem to remember where. One claims that one actress from a TV show wore those same glasses. However, he can't seem to remember what the show was called. know the name of the actress. The only thing that he can remember is that the show was a sitcom, and the officer even says that he claimed to have seen the same name of the actress in the credits of his child's favorite show. It says she voiced a child dragon character in the show. The others looked through the surveillance camera for clues. They found footage of a young teen and an old man who killed the teen. One officer realizes that the voice of the teen does sound familiar and that she was in a show she watched. All I now know is there is apparently a serial killer or kidnapper is on the loose and the teenager who was a victim. Folks, that's all the recent information we received. Turn the next 10 minutes with further details. After that, the radio static came back and showed paintings of the inside of the church, and I assumed it had something to do with the death of Trump. Zoomed in on the photorealistic coffin. The Zack appeared on the screen, and he shouted, "Cassie, no!" The video cut to Zack and Cassie. You can only hear their heavy breathing as Zack faded away. The whole background faded to a white background, and the video changed to a silent, third-person video with random beeping noises, and by silent, all you can hear was a film projector running. It showed Cassie walking around a white background. She just kept walking as the beeping sounds got louder. It cut to a gray screen, and after a few seconds it cut back. The animation was now crude, with Cassie having a pill-shaped torso and her face having a slick smile, similar to Ward's. She had no eyes and no arms either. Cassie's legs were slender and thin, like stick figures. The beeping sounds got louder and louder by the second, and I was getting scared at the moment that I didn't want to watch anymore. I tried to get up and turn off the VCR, but I couldn't get out of my seat, as it was like it was hypnotizing me to stay on my seat or I was glued to it. Cassie stopped and walked over towards the screen. I could hear her breathing. Her eyes were bloodshot, her teeth were broken, her hair was shaved off, and the claws on her fingers and toes had the same blood on the sharp parts. At this point, I thought Cassie could hear me. She opened her mouth, and what followed was the most ear-piercing, loudest sound I've ever heard in my life. It wasn't like a scream, but a really messed up beeping sound that was louder than any human could hear. How bad was the sound? My ears sometimes still ring from that. That is how bad it was. In fact, I'm lucky I'm not deaf. Cassie continued to stare at me as I tried to shut the damn thing off. Said Cassie, who now sounded like a crying, choking woman. Suddenly, the scene cut back to normal. Cassie now had a shocked look on her face. Izzy looked a little bit worried. "We must break this," she said in a worried and shocked tone. The video faded to a black and faded back to a dragon tune. For those who don't know, the format was 2 10-minute episodes and a song in between, like a sandwich. I thought the nightmare had ended, but it hadn't. This was just the halfway point. The nightmare still continued. The song was an organ track that was being looped. The video quality wasn't very good, so I couldn't see what was really going on. From what I could make out, there were about 500 dragons in a gigantic circle chanting, "Cassie, Cassie, Cassie," over and over for a few minutes. Cassie then smiled and jumped into the fire. The video quality suddenly improved and shows Cassie's blood burning. She looked at me and proclaimed, "You did this to me," before her skin was burned to ashes and her entire body turned to rubble. It actually showed her being burned all the way through. Suddenly, hundreds of dragons pounced on her remains. They began to scratch at each other. They were eating each other. It showed dragons biting into each other's skulls, dragons ripping off the flesh of other dragons, a dragon violating a smaller dragon, and a fleshless dragons crying blood. I began to wonder how in God's name this was a dragon tune. The scene changed back to Max and Emmy back in their house. "I need my truck," explained Max. "Well, hurry up," said Emmy in a quite angry voice. Max was then searching in the toy box when a pair of arms grabbed him, pulled him inside, and closed it. A quick sound effect played like the sound of a door locking. Emmy, I'm locked! Help me!" he screamed. He was crying. Like, actually crying. Not acting. It's stuck! Hemi screamed. You can feel the pain as Max panicked to get out. But to make a long story short, he didn't. Cut to him waking up on a yellow chair, the same exact one in the beginning. Right on one side of the right room were the carcasses of the dead dragons. Max walked up to the corpses and started to eat them. I felt sick. I felt like throwing up during that scene. So I went to the bathroom and vomited in the toilet. I got back up and I felt relieved that the scene of Max eating the corpses finally ended. It faded to black, then faded again to show Max sitting in the yellow chair with the same bloodshot and tiny eyes. It was the exact same image I saw at the beginning. During the scene, a narration by a gruff voice played. They call this place hell. When you die, you get transported here. I had nothing to eat except the dead bodies of dragons. I lost my vision and went blind, so I took out the eyes of a dead dragon and put them over my eyes, but I still could not see. It's been 2.5 months since I arrived here. There is no heaven, and there is never heaven to deal with. I can no longer go back to my old life, when you live in your own life, you can never bring it back to its original state. They say the hell is a fiery place, but it's not. But that doesn't mean the true hell is less worse. I've never come into contact with anybody. The life you've always had was false. One day, your life, as well as other people's lives, will end. There's no real life, and the only real life you ever had was never real. The only food is the rotted corpses of dragons. Otherwise, you will starve. The only way out is suicide, but even that won't help you. And how can someone feel so alone? It's a big complex. I can finally see. Wait, I can't see at all. He then reached down at the bottom of the yellow chair he was sitting on, pulled out a noose, tied it to the ceiling, then tied it to his neck. He then stood on the chair, and then the screen panned up to the crudely drawn words of Dragon Tales, written in red, before Kick his her and the chair crashed down. It cut to Emmy back at their playroom when she finally opens the chest, but nothing is in there. Max was nowhere to be seen, and the toys in the toy box were gone. All that was there was the wallpaper of the dragons in the box that contained the enchanted dragon scale. Emmy opened up the box and held the dragon scale inside until she accidentally dropped it, thus shattering it in the process. Then a black spear starts to form in the middle of the now broken dragon scale, which gradually increased in size. Emmy screamed in fear and ran to the other end of the room while the dragon's faces on the wallpaper started to develop sinister smile. Oh, by the way, there were no visible doors. Emmy had curled into a fetal position and quietly sobbed until a giant black darkness completely bowled her in. It faded to Emmy, left alone in the darkness, trying to find a way out, until she realized she couldn't move. She also realized that she was slowly sinking into the floor. She panicked and tried to get out, but to no avail. You could feel her pain as she was desperate to break free. That is until her arms were trapped to the floor, and she wasn't able to move them. There were large cracking sounds, presumably her bones and ribs cracking. She sobbed at the top of her lungs, louder than any child sobbing ever. She cried until the floor almost completely swallowed her with her head sticking out. She took a final deep breath until the whole floor swallowed her like quick gas. You can still hear her voice, yet it's still muffled. Until a loud cracking noise played, possibly signify that her skull cracked. It cut to a gigantic cage and Zoe Jack wheezing on all fours, drinking water from a dish. But their singing voice was muffled, so he couldn't understand the words. After a while, the song became more clear, and the voices of Zack and Wheezy now sounded like an old man with a girl voice and a girl no older than 14. The last verse went something like this. Alabado si tu diablo porque tú es tu que te pusía porque el dolor ya ni la tutora son todo lo que podemos ver. Es mejor tu que yo. I managed to translate it to English. What it meant was something like this. Praise thy devil, for he is thou. Let him possesseth unto thou. For pain and torture is all we can see. It's better thou than him and me. I then paused, and the video cut to a surveillance camera room. There was a teenage girl and an old man in a room, sitting in two chairs. In fact, it was the same white room mentioned by the news anchor man. The people in the room were the same two people who voice acting Wheezy. The teenage girl was wearing the same glasses mentioned before, and she was actually crying. Stand up, the man said in a gruff voice. I said stand the hell up so I can do you again. You could actually see the man to the girl, and you could feel her pain as she was being forced to do something illegal. Her screams and cried echoes until finally they stopped. Stand up, you filthy piece of shit, the man yelled. I want to go home, the girl cried, and she screamed. Out of the blue, a loud gunshot rang as the man shot the poor girl, who fell out of her chair, continuing to scream loudly. 5 shots were fired, and she was killed. They could hear the whispering of the old man's voice. Oh crap, he whispered. What am I gonna do with the body? After that, it cut to different angle camera shots of a claymation short of an airplane crashing into the One World Trade Center. I began to wonder how the terrorism act and the girl's kidnapping, rape, and murder connected together. It cut to pitch black, and then suddenly a face came out of the shadows. It was a terrifying figure from one of the worst nightmares I had when I was 5. He looked like Satan. His eyes were bulging out, he had a big smile on his face, and he almost looked like he was crying blood. He opened his mouth and let out that ear-piercing sound I heard earlier. This time it was more high-pitched. I was able to stop the video now. I didn't want to see the face of that terrible shipload of crap anymore. I shut off the VCR and stayed up all night on my computer. I couldn't sleep, and every time I even dozed off, I saw the devil in my dreams saying, God has abandoned us, over and over again. I then threw the videotape out of my window. Before garbage day, I made sure the video was in the garbage, but it wasn't there. Sorry. I searched the house and it was nowhere to be seen. I contacted PBS and told them the episode from start to finish. All they said was this. We are sorry, but we do not know what you're talking about. That episode is not a real episode, although we thank you for your interest in the show. And remember, Dragon Tales airs weekly on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. at night, or something like that. I've never seen the tape again, and I warned you to never pick up mysterious videotapes you find. If you find this episode, make sure to burn it. Burn the ever-living hell out of that wretched thing, and stomp on its ashes until it's gone from the face of this planet. And I'm pretty much sure that's it. This has been the first episode of Shadow Reads. I hope it's better than last time. And I thank you guys for coming to see me read this episode. Be sure to request me any creepypastas that I should read. This is Shadow signing out.